The champagne flute felt heavy, almost mocking, in my hand. Gwen's laughter, that sharp, brittle sound, sliced through the manufactured cheer of her birthday party like a poorly tuned violin. Of course, she drawled, that voice of hers dripping with condescension, darling Sarah wouldn't understand the complexities of running a successful business. She's busy rescuing kittens, isn't she? A wave of brittle laughter, mirroring Gwen's, rippled through the small, perfectly sculpted group of her friends. Each one looked like they'd been poured into their designer dresses, their faces frozen in practiced expressions of amusement. I took a slow sip of my champagne, the bubbles doing little to soothe the knot that had taken up permanent residence in my stomach months ago. The opulent ballroom blurred around me. The glittering chandeliers, the vast floral arrangements that probably cost more than my annual salary, the designer dresses that felt like suffocating cages, all of it felt foreign and hostile. Everyone expected me to be humiliated, to shrink under the weight of Gwen's verbal lash. They were practically salivating, waiting for the tears, the outburst, the predictable reaction of the girl who lived a simple life. What they didn't know, what Gwen so foolishly underestimated, was that the simplicity they scorned was my shield. My sanctuary. And Gwen, in her arrogance, had just handed me the victory. She just didn't know it yet. I felt a small, private smile tug at the corner of my lips. Actually, Gwen, I said, my voice calm and steady, betraying none of the turmoil brewing inside, I've never been more prepared. The smile widened, just a fraction. Prepared for what, they probably wondered. Well, they were about to find out. My name is Serafina Bellwether, but everyone calls me Sarah. I'm 28 years old, and I work as a vet tech at the local animal shelter. It's not glamorous, it doesn't pay particularly well, but it's honest work. I get to make a real difference in the lives of animals who can't speak for themselves, and that's more fulfilling to me than any corner office or six-figure salary. My dad, bless his heart, he's always been drawn to the flashy type. Gwen Albright, now Gwen Albright Bellwether, the hyphenation still stings, even after all this time, is the latest in a long line of trophy girlfriends, each one more ostentatious than the last. From the moment Gwen sashayed into our lives 2 years ago, she made it abundantly clear that I was an inconvenience, a relic from a past she wanted to erase. I was the reminder of my dad's previous, less sophisticated life. She filled Dad's head with ideas of rebranding, expensive clothes, exclusive clubs, distancing himself from his lowbrow daughter. He tried, bless him, he really did. He'd show up at Sunday dinner in some ridiculously tailored suit, reeking of cologne that probably cost more than my car. But the love between us was strong, a bond forged over years of shared experience and mutual respect. He'd always call me, even if it was from a fancy gala filled with people who probably thought a doggy bag was something you ordered from Hermes, whispering, just checking on you, pumpkin. He could never quite shake off his genuine concern for my well-being, no matter how hard Gwen tried to mold him into her image of the perfect, polished accessory. Gwen, however, made no such effort to connect. She openly mocked my career choice, playing with puppies all day. How fulfilling, my clothes, darling, are you aware they sell things other than jeans in this century, and my entire existence? Sunday dinners became excruciating performances where I felt I had to constantly defend myself and my life choices. Everything about me, from my calloused hands to my unfashionable haircut, was an affront to her perfectly curated world. I became less and less willing to sit at her table. I hated being a prop in her warped theater. About a year ago, Dad had asked me to get a full medical checkup. He was worried about his own health, he's getting older, and the stress of keeping up with Gwen's lifestyle was starting to take its toll. He wanted both of us to be healthy for each other, to be around for each other for a long time. It was during that checkup, during a battery of routine tests, that I learned I was a perfect match for a rare kidney condition. My doctor explained that statistically, the chances of finding a perfect match outside of immediate family were astronomically low. Like winning the lottery, but instead of cash, you win the opportunity to potentially save someone's life. I didn't think much of it then. I just filed the information away, a curious piece of medical trivia, something to tell my friend Sarah, who was a medical student and enjoyed that sort of thing. But then, 6 months later, Dad called me, his voice tight with worry, barely a whisper. Gwen had been diagnosed with a rare and aggressive form of kidney disease. Her kidneys were failing fast, and she needed a transplant. Immediately. And who was the only compatible donor in the family? Me. The irony was almost too much to bear. That's when the wheels started turning, slowly at first, then with increasing speed and force. I knew Gwen, in her self-absorbed world, would never think I was capable of anything other than scooping poop and bandaging paws. She'd underestimate me, dismiss me as an insignificant obstacle. And that was my advantage, my secret weapon. I started researching everything I could about kidney transplants, the long-term effects, the recovery process, the legal implications. I consulted with doctors, specialists, and even a lawyer friend of mine, David, who owed me a few favors for patching up his perpetually clumsy golden retriever. I needed to be prepared for every angle, every potential manipulation. This wasn't just about saving Gwen's life, it was about protecting myself and making sure my decision, whatever it would be, was made on my own terms, free from coercion or guilt trips. What Gwen didn't expect and what she'd soon find out, was that I knew this entire ordeal was coming, not because of some divine premonition, but because my father, bless his clumsy, well-meaning heart, had told me about Gwen's diagnosis before Gwen herself had. He'd asked me to be ready, just in case. He hated secrets, but he knew if Gwen knew I knew, she would go after me, tear me down. I'd been ready for months, meticulously planning, quietly preparing for the inevitable confrontation. In the weeks that followed Gwen's diagnosis, I meticulously played the role of the dutiful, if slightly clueless, stepdaughter-to-be. I offered to help with appointments, research transplant centers, and even learn about her new restrictive diet, all things that, frankly, bored me to tears, but it was a necessary charade. Gwen, of course, accepted my offers with a thinly veiled air of superiority. She saw my willingness to help as a sign of weakness, a desperate attempt to gain her approval, and to ingratiate myself into her good graces. "Oh, Sarah, how sweet of you," she'd say, her voice dripping with condescension, like honey laced with poison. "But this is all very complicated. I doubt you'd understand." I let her believe that. I let her think I was simply a naive animal lover out of my depth, incapable of grasping the complexities of her sophisticated world. While she was busy planning her lavish birthday party, a distraction, I suspected, from the grim reality of her failing health, I was quietly gathering information, building my case, preparing for the inevitable showdown. I went to the transplant center for preliminary testing, all the while acting as if I were doing it for my father's sake, to ease his worry and demonstrate my unwavering support. I even managed to get copies of Gwen's medical records through a friendly contact I had met during a volunteer clinic I'd organized at the animal shelter. A doctor, disgusted with Gwen's behavior. I had a complete picture of her condition, her prognosis, the potential risks involved, everything laid bare before me. I also made sure to meticulously document every instance of Gwen's demeaning behavior. Every cutting remark, every snide comment, every dismissive gesture. I knew that if I decided to go through with the transplant, I would need to protect myself legally and emotionally. I couldn't go through with such a life-altering procedure and then be subjected to a lifetime of abuse by her. I needed insurance. The more Gwen saw me as harmless, the more information she unconsciously revealed. She talked freely about her fears, her insecurities, and her deep-seated belief that she deserved the best in life, no matter the cost or who got hurt in the process. With every word, she was unknowingly digging her own grave, providing me with the ammunition I would need to level the playing field. Which brings us back to the birthday party. The champagne, the glittering guests, and Gwen's triumphant laughter. She thought she'd won. She thought she'd finally relegated me to the role of the pathetic, insignificant stepdaughter. But she was wrong. So wrong. After her jab about my career, I took another sip of champagne, savoring the moment, steeling myself for what was to come. I calmly placed the flute on the table, the clink of glass on glass somehow cutting through the noise of the party, and turned to face the small crowd that had gathered around us, drawn by the scent of impending drama. They were like vultures, circling, waiting for the kill. "Gwen," I said, my voice clear and carrying through the room, silencing the chatter and drawing all eyes to me. "You're right, I may not understand the complexities of running a successful business. But I do understand compassion, empathy, and the inherent value of human life." I paused, letting my words sink in, watching as her face slowly began to register the shift in power. "And I also understand medical records and donor compatibility reports." Gwen's face paled, the carefully applied makeup unable to mask the look of dawning horror in her eyes. She visibly recoiled, as though I'd struck her. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice losing its usual confident edge. I smiled, a genuine smile this time, not the tight, polite smile I'd been wearing all evening. "I'm talking about the fact that I'm your only hope, Gwen. I'm the only person in this room who can save your life. And unlike you, I don't see that as an opportunity to belittle and demean. I see it as a responsibility." I watched as her perfectly crafted world started to crumble around her. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, a wave of shock and disbelief washing over the room. My father, who had been standing silently beside Gwen, his face etched with worry, looked at me with a mixture of shock and pride. I could see the love in his eyes, and a glimmer of understanding. Even Gwen's impeccably dressed friends were staring, their expressions a mix of disbelief and morbid curiosity, as if they were witnessing a particularly juicy scene from a reality TV show. "I've spent the last few months learning everything I can about kidney transplants," I continued, my gaze fixed on Gwen, unwavering and determined. "I know the risks, the benefits, and the long-term implications. And I've made a decision." I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with air, steeling myself for the backlash I knew was coming. "I'm willing to donate my kidney, but on certain conditions." I paused for effect, letting my words hang in the air. "Firstly, I've prepared a legally binding document outlining that I will not be subjected to any disparaging or demeaning comments. My worth as a person is not contingent on my career, my clothes, or my social status. I will not be treated like a second-class citizen in my own father's home. Second, I ask that you actively participate in volunteering at the animal shelter so that you may, perhaps, develop some genuine compassion for creatures other than yourself. And third is mandatory family therapy, to discuss the hurt you've caused not only me, but my father as well. This isn't just about saving your life, Gwen, it's about changing your life." Gwen's face was now a mask of fury and humiliation, her carefully constructed facade completely shattered. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed, her voice barely audible above the stunned silence of the room. "Try me," I said, my voice dangerously low, but firm and resolute. "Because without me, Gwen, you're not just losing a stepdaughter. You're losing your life." The silence that followed my announcement was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the chandeliers. Gwen stood frozen, her carefully constructed facade crumbling before my eyes, revealing the insecure, frightened woman beneath. My father, after a moment of stunned silence, stepped forward and took my hand, squeezing it tightly. "Sarah," he began, his voice choked with emotion. I had no idea." He looked at me with a newfound respect, a dawning realization of the strength and resilience I had been hiding beneath a veneer of simple kindness. Gwen's friends, realizing the power dynamic had shifted dramatically, began to back away, their smiles replaced with nervous glances and whispers. The party, once a celebration of Gwen's success and superiority, was now a testament to her spectacular downfall, a public humiliation she would likely never fully recover from. Gwen tried to salvage the situation, but her words were weak and unconvincing. She mumbled something about being misunderstood, about her words being taken out of context, about how stressed she was with her health problems. But no one was buying it. The truth was out in the open, and there was no going back. The carefully constructed image she had cultivated was shattered beyond repair. In the days that followed, the fallout was significant. Gwen's social circle, those fair-weather friends who thrived on her wealth and status, began to ostracize her, shunning her at social gatherings and gossiping behind her back. The whispers and judging glances were too much for her to bear. It was as if they smelled weakness, and like sharks, they turned on her. I ended up going through with the transplant. After it was done, after weeks of agonizing deliberation and countless sleepless nights, she agreed to my terms. She begrudgingly volunteered at the shelter, she attended family therapy, and she even, slowly, began to appreciate the simple things in life, the things she had so readily dismissed before. Of course, it was a long and difficult process, filled with tears, arguments, and moments of genuine connection, moments of tentative understanding. My father and I were there through it all, navigating the treacherous waters of her emotional turmoil. 2 years have passed since the infamous birthday party and the transplant. Gwen is, remarkably, a changed woman. She still enjoys the finer things in life, but she now understands that true worth isn't measured by wealth or status, by the labels on her clothes or the size of her bank account. She volunteers regularly at the animal shelter, and to my surprise, she's developed a genuine affection for the animals, spending hours cuddling kittens and walking dogs. She's also become a staunch advocate for organ donation, using her platform to raise awareness and encourage others to become donors, speaking publicly about her experience with humility and honesty. Our relationship is still a work in progress, but it's built on respect, honesty, and a shared appreciation for the gift of life. We even managed to laugh about the birthday party incident, though Gwen still cringes a little at the memory of her past behavior. It's a reminder of how far she's come and how much she's changed. My father is happier than I've seen him in years. He finally understands that my simple life is exactly what makes me strong and resilient, that my compassion and empathy are not weaknesses, but sources of immense power. He's also learned that sometimes, the greatest strength lies in knowing when to wait, when to plan, and when to strike, that patience and preparation can be even more effective than brute force. Looking back, I realize that Gwen's initial animosity was a gift in disguise, a catalyst for change that ultimately benefited all of us. It forced me to confront my own insecurities, to embrace my values, and to find my voice. It taught me that true power lies not in wealth or status, but in compassion, empathy, and the unwavering belief in your own worth. It also taught me the importance of standing up for yourself, of refusing to be silenced or diminished by others. The most important lesson I learned is to never underestimate anyone. Everyone has their own unique strengths and vulnerabilities, and judging them based on appearances or social status is not only unfair but also foolish. Sometimes, the quietest, most unassuming person in the room is the one who holds all the cards, the one with the knowledge and the resolve to make a difference. And sometimes, the greatest act of kindness is also the greatest act of self-preservation. It is a reminder to always treat others with respect and kindness, because you never know when you might need their help, or when they might just be the ones holding the keys to your salvation. You also might not know what battles people are fighting behind closed doors, and a little compassion can go a long way.